Okay, excellent. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the VCU College of Health Professions, where we're having this event. But actually, this is an event that is led by Dr. Tori Tucker and colleagues with the VCU Health History and Health team. We're very excited to be here to celebrate Black History Month, but also to recognize the history of St. Philip School of Nursing and the rich history of the living legends who graduated from that school. My name is Stephen Davis, and I have the pleasure of serving as Associate Dean of Inclusive Excellence and Belonging for both the College of Health Professions and the School of Nursing. I would like to also extend a welcome from the deans of both the College of Health Professions and the School of Nursing who aren't here today. They had other engagements. But Jean Giddens, who's the Dean of the VCU School of Nursing, and our interim Dean of the College of Health Professions, Dr. Paula Song. So we're all pleased that you were able to join us for this important conversation. I have the responsibility of introducing our esteemed colleague, Dr. Tori Tucker. So Dr. Tucker has done her dissertation research. She did her PhD at UVA, School of Nursing, University of Virginia, and studied through oral histories the experiences of Black nurses. So she's extremely qualified to facilitate this discussion today with living legends from St. Philip's School of Nursing. And she is doing a postdoctoral fellowship in the humanities. So welcome to our colleagues from the humanities as well. So really excited to facilitate a discussion here today through Dr. Tucker, looking at the intersection of the humanities and healthcare, and really the important experiences of Black nurses through VCU School of Nursing in St. Philip. So without further ado, Dr. Tucker.
But how many people know that Black history is American history? So as we hold space today to gather, we are going to sit in oral histories, we're going to sit in present day histories, and we are going to engage together. I invite discomfort. Some of the things that we talk about may be uncomfortable, but that is part of doing this work that is imperative if we are committed to health equity and health access here in Virginia, and specifically at our institution, VCU. So as I gather, we're going to make this interactive. We are going to have a beautiful panel discussion, and we're going to continue to invite the community in as folks come into our building. But before we do that, I would be remiss if I did not start with the history. And I want to just lay some foundation and some context. So I'm going to stand up here, but then I want to get into the nitty gritty. And then I'm going to invite our honored guests to come join me down here for a private and intimate conversation. So first, I want to welcome everyone in the audience. I think the furthest traveled might be Maryland. Who traveled from Maryland today? All right. Ms. Holmes' daughter traveled from Maryland, one of her daughters, and Ms. Holmes, our panelist, traveled all the way from Lynchburg, Virginia to be here today. And I recognize I can't see everyone that's in the Zoom land, but I want to thank you all for being here and with us. So you can also drop in the chat where you're from. If there's anyone from the 757, we'll be talking about Newport News. If there's anyone that's from New York, further out, and I don't know, even maybe the West Coast. So excited for you to be here. I want to especially thank the Humanities Research Center for making this possible. I am a residential fellow with the HRC. And without that, I would not be able to continue to do this work. I also want to thank the Palliative Care Unit. Anyone here from the Palliative Care Unit? Woo! I see some team members. We are an interdisciplinary team committed to quality of life and symptom management. We do some incredible work in Massey Cancer Center, but specifically, we continue to focus on the quality of life for our patients across the care continuum. I am a better historian because I sit with and learn from my amazing and esteemed colleagues. So thank you for the work that you all do for our patients. Part of being a nurse and a historian means I get to wear both hats, but I wouldn't be able to do it without you. So thank you. So shout out to them. And lastly, I also just want to thank the team from the Health Equity Office as well. They have been wonderful in creating space for me. And in addition to that, thank you, Stefan, for my introduction and for being a mentor and guide in this process too. So we're gonna close our eyes. If you're virtual, I want you to close your eyes too. And if you're in person, I want you to close your eyes. I promise nothing's gonna pop out, but this is a moment, an invitation to use our imagination. And though it's 2024, I want us to go back in time. So as you close your eyes, I am going to be reading a collective prose. This collective prose came from oral histories I had the privilege to complete with Black women who desegregated our schools of nursing and hospitals across Virginia between the 1950s and 1980s. As your eyes remain closed, imagine their pathways into nursing. These are their collective voices. I applied to one of the hospitals to become a registered nurse. I thought I could join the university, but I found out that was not so. I thought I could start nursing school there, but I found out. I was told they would not accept me because I was colored. There were only 3 nursing schools in Virginia that accepted Black students. Then I decided I would take that route if I had to. I called my dad and I told him about the incident. Yeah, he drove me to Richmond. He wasn't going to let me go by myself. My mother borrowed $75 so I could go and enroll in that school. You can open your eyes now. Thank you for going on that journey. So we're going to be in the 1950s to 1980s. Think Jim Crow era. So unless I say it's desegregated, assume that these are segregated institutions for learning and care. By the end of the 19th century, formal nurse training programs afforded women a pathway into higher education. Yet, from the beginning, nursing education was based on racialized exclusionary practices and policies. During the Jim Crow era, the Medical College of Virginia, also known as MCV, opened St. Philip Hospital and School of Nursing in 1920 as a segregated institution to provide care for Richmond's Black community, but also to prepare Black nurses. Conversely, Black physicians were not permitted to practice at St. Philip Hospital. For over 4 decades, St. Philip's School of Nursing served as a premier training program for Black women across the United States. And so here pictured, we have St. Philip Hospital, and we also have the first graduating classes. So 1923 and 1924 combined for an official graduation ceremony in 1924. And this June, it will be 100 years since the first class graduated from St. Philip. St. Philip also provided an affiliated partnership between programs and schools outside of Richmond. These included Hampton Institute and Piedmont Sanatorium, where Mrs. Holmes attended. Nearly 800 graduates matriculated through St. Philip's School of Nursing before it closed in 1962. And pictured here, because I do believe this is divine work as well, is Miss Beulah Mason. And I had the privilege of being connected with her daughter yesterday. She happened to just say, my mom went to Hampton Institute, but she did an affiliated portion of her clinicals at St. Philip. Well, lo and behold, if I didn't find her in the archives this morning. So what brings life to this work is that these aren't just people that we're finding and discovering in files, in boxes. These are living, breathing people. And she was a graduate of Hampton Institute, pictured here. And this Newport News article, college nurses begin intern work. And specifically, they recognize that they're doing their work at St. Philip School of Nursing. Black students remained barred from MCV's School of Nursing until 1957, when Charlotte Ann Wynn Pollard was admitted and later graduated in 1960. There will be an article coming out that Dina's working on that will come out later today with more on her story, so please stay tuned for that. While she could attend MCV School of Nursing, she was not allowed in the dormitory. Her social life was restricted to St. Philip's dorm and engaging with St. Philip's students. Following the Brown v. Board of Education decision, Virginia was also the site of massive resistance. and continued to maintain racialized segregation in education for over a decade. State leaders fought school desegregation until federal courts intervened. You may be thinking, well, how does that affect healthcare? Everything. If you can't matriculate through school, you don't have access to a school of medicine, and you also don't have access to a school of nursing. The 1964 Civil Rights Act, Title VI, warrants our attention. This policy ended institutional segregation in federally funded healthcare systems, although institutions like MCV, VCU, and the University of Virginia still found creative and less visible ways to maintain segregation in hospital and clinical settings. If you did not want to desegregate, there were ways. This form of professional marginalization and exclusion were costly for nurses, physicians, patients, and the community at large. And I want to pause here and recognize who's featured in this picture and who I'm wearing on my shirt today. This is the grandfather of one of my best friends, Kristen Hobson, who's in the audience today. Her grandfather, Dr. William M.T. Forrester, was a Black physician here in Richmond. He practiced from 1930 to 1987 as a general practitioner. He was not allowed privileges as a physician at St. Philip's Hospital. That meant when his patients were sick and he had to make a hospital referral, if they came here, that continuity of care stopped. That did not stop him. He had privileges, however, at Richmond Community, Richmond Memorial, and St. Mary's Hospital. He marched for our civil rights. He was involved in the NAACP. He is a part of the fraternity Omega Psi Phi. He did work to establish the Metropolitan Junior Baseball League to ensure that Black youth had access to sports. He was a physician and health professional and an activist. We often talk about educators being on the front line during the civil rights movement, but also it looked different for healthcare professionals. Sometimes you were marching, sometimes you were at the bedside. He was someone that did both. As I talk about nursing history, we're also going to talk about medical history because you can't see one without the other. Can we just do a shout out for Dr. Forrester and the work that he did? And we'll loop back to Richmond Community Hospital and why that hospital is so important when we also consider St. Philip's School of Nursing and why work needs to be done to preserve the architectural space that still exists today. Historical accounts rarely center Black nurses' voices, experiences, or contributions in healthcare. But today, together, we're going to change that record. Centering Black women, we will explore themes across time, discussing girlhood, coming of age experiences, pathways in nursing, and personal pursuits. More specifically, why history matters in healthcare today. I'm really big on giving credit where credit is due. A lot of the information I've gathered are from the personal collections of graduates themselves. They've retained this history. They, in many ways, have their own archive in their homes. This record is from Virginia Roan, and pictured here are two graduates of St. Philip's School of Nursing, Virginia Roan, class of 1961, and Gwendolyn Strain, class of 1957, all of whom Mrs. Burlett Trent knows quite well, and they did work together with the St. Philip Alumni Association. Don't they look good? They look so good. So this is the point in my presentation where I'm going to transition and I'm going to have our panelists. We're going to come have a moment to sit. So if you need to stretch your legs a moment, we're going to just transition to our seated spots so we can have an in-depth conversation. All right. So this is my favorite part because this is meant to be more of a dialogue and a conversation. I'm going to embed some context, but we're just going to not freestyle, but just let the work happen. And so before me, I have Mrs. Mary Gilbert Holmes, and I have Mrs. Burlett Trent. I'm just excited. Amen. And if they only knew what it took to get here. So we're just gonna celebrate that we're all here and standing. Because there were some obstacles, but we're here. But we are here. So I'm going to start with Mrs. Trent because I feel like I should start in order. She's 91, Mrs. Holmes is 86. We're going to go with the oldest. Big sister, you get to start. Okay. So Mrs. Trent was born, let me turn on my mic because I realized on Zoom, they may not be able to hear me. Okay, I'm sorry. Can you all hear me on Zoom now? Wonderful. Okay. If you didn't hear my introduction, I have Mrs. Holmes and I also have Mrs. Trent here. And we're going to start with big sister order. So we have Mrs. Trent, who was born in 1932 and grew up in Newport News, Virginia.
Yeah, right.
On the waterfront.
On the waterfront.
So Mrs. Trent, can you tell us about spending your girlhood in Newport News? And what did you appreciate about your hometown? You'll have to move the mic a little bit closer.
Well, as you say, it was on the waterfront, so we had ships coming in from all different places in the world. So you got to see, if not interact with people from many other nations and besides the United States.
And were there any nurses? Did you see any nurses when you were growing up in your hometown?
I did. In the summer, I used to work at the hospital, cleaning the beds and so forth. And so I got to see the nurses working there. And that's how I knew I wanted to be a registered nurse rather than a licensed practical nurse.
Wonderful. And where did those nurses attend school?
They were all white, so I can't tell you.
Oh, well, okay. But that tells us a lot too. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Mrs. Holmes, you were born in 1937 and grew up in Gladys, Virginia, located in Campbell County, Virginia.
Right.
I think once you described it as a town within a town. Can you tell us about spending your girlhood in Gladys, Virginia? What did you appreciate about your hometown?
As you said before, I lived in Gladys, Virginia, one of 12 children of a farmer. We didn't have any social contacts, really. Being one of 12, we had our own baseball team.
Oh, yes.
We raised everything in the garden except salt and pepper. And we worked hard. We were poor, but we didn't know that we were poor because I was never hungry. Mother knew how to cook grass, really. My dad and mom only had elementary education, but they taught us the value of living a good, honest life. As I said before, we worked hard, and we had very little contact with the social world. We went to church. Of course, we all went to schools. Schools then were segregated. We walked to school. In spite of the weather, school was never closed. Rain or snow, it was never closed. And when they finally sent the bus to pick up the kids, our white friends rode the bus, but we had to walk. But it was fun. It was fun, but hard work. And as I said before, I don't remember ever being hungry. We didn't have electricity. We lived in a 4-room log cabin with no outside privy. We went to spring to get water.
Mm-hmm.
We had our own, we canned our own vegetables. We always had our own pigs and chicken. And it was just a good life. It was hard. And I guess other people would call us poor, but we didn't know that we were poor because we were rich.
Yes.
We were rich.
Yeah. That well said. And Mrs. Holmes, were there nurses in your community?
No, but I had a great aunt who was a midwife. And I guess that was my very first interest in being a nurse, because the only medical person I was accustomed to was Doc Morgan. Doc Morgan would stop by one house and birth a calf, and then he would come to another house and birth a baby.
Oh,
So when Mom told me that Doc Morgan brought the baby in his basket, it was nothing for me to do but believe it, because I don't know where else it came from.
you just knew the siblings kept coming.
It just kept coming. And Mother told us it came behind it, that the baby came with a cabbage patch.
Yeah.
My brother went to the garden and he looked around at the cabbage and he said, "Mom, I didn't see a baby behind the cabbage." And of course, I couldn't look in Doc Morgan's bag.
Oh, no.
So I had to believe that. I didn't realize Mom was pregnant. I came home and that was my brother.
Right from the Cabbage Patch.
Oh, Doc Morgan's
I know.
bag.
Oh, yes, you're right. Doc Morgan's bag. Well, thank you.
So that was my interest in nursing, and I always wanted to be a nurse. It was my dream, but I didn't realize it was possible because of one of 12 children, and living on a farm. My dad's income was nil practically. So it was just a dream. And so I nursed everything around the house. I nursed the chickens, I nursed the cows, I nursed the hogs. And then we had to kill them and eat them.
Oh. But you had the makings of being an
Yes.
amazing nurse
Yes,
very
indeed.
young.
Yes.
Thank you. And speaking of family, there is a picture on the slides that you all can see online and in person of Miss Holmes' family. It's a family portrait. And I am going to transition us to talk about Miss Burlette Trent's mom, but through her mom, we're actually going to talk about her grandmother. Mrs. Trent was raised by her grandmother, Elsie Jackson. Miss Trent's mother, Burlette Jackson, passed when she was 8 years old, following complications from what she now believes was a vascular event. Mrs. Burlette's earliest example of care and advocacy also came from family. Her grandmother, Elsie Jackson, who she witnessed take care of her mother. At the time, for the Black community, hospitals were not necessarily accessible. If you lived in Campbell County, Virginia, it could be because of rural landscape. If you lived in Newport News, it could be financial barriers. It could be restrictions such as Black patients only be accepted on basement wards or restricted units. So just because there were hospitals did not mean there was access. Mrs. Trent's grandmother not only provided care for Miss Burlette's mother, but instilled values and words that have remained with Miss Burlette since girlhood. And this is a quote that I've decided I'm borrowing for myself too. Her grandmother, Miss Elsie Jackson, would say, "There is no one better than you, though you may have had, there is no one better than you, though they may have had more than you." So I'll say it again. There is no one better than you, though they may have had more than you. Miss Trent, how did your grandmother's words shape you? And what did those words mean?
Well, actually what she said.
Oh yes, get me straight. Get me straight, but also in the mic.
Is that there may be people who have more than you, but there is no one better than you. So
I just want to make sure they can hear you online. Oh yeah. Can you say it? Yeah, say it again.
She said, there may be those who have more than you, but there is no one better than you.
Yes.
So wherever I went and whoever I'm on the same plane. I might not have plane, but I might not have, you might not recognize it, but I know it.
Yes. You were never diminished because you knew who
No.
you were.
I knew who I was.
Yeah.
And that got me in trouble a whole lot of times, but but yeah,
That's what we call good trouble, though.
yeah, sometimes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. But yes, this is a picture of her mother, Burlette Jackson. And that's Miss Holmes and her siblings, the baseball team.
Okay.
Miss Holmes, thank you, Miss Burlette. I hope someone captured that, and if they can put the quote in the chat and just type it and drop it in there, because it's like, I want that plastered in my bathroom. I don't know, can we put that in our patient rooms? We'll have to talk about how we can give her credit, but it's so powerful. And to know that as you pursued your pathway into nursing, it just says a lot. It says a lot. Miss Holmes, you are the daughter, as you mentioned, of Rebecca and Percy Gilbert. Your mother was tenacious and faith-filled, whose presence filled the home. And she, as you mentioned, had the vital responsibility of caring for you and your siblings. And your father, Percy, was an enduring tobacco farmer.
Right.
There's an experience in girlhood that you once told me about that I wanted to sort of unpack here today. You shared with me about an encounter your father had while he was attempting to purchase ice cream in a locally white-owned store. See, Gladys, Virginia was different. While schools were segregated, while churches may have been segregated, stores and public spaces were at the discretion of the owners. And so in this case, Mr. Percy Gilbert's trying to purchase ice cream, but something happens and you're there watching.
Yeah.
Could you share with us what took place?
Well, Dad was the first one in line. Dad was the first one in line, and he bought his ice cream and put it on the counter. Before the he could be waited on, other customers came in who were white, and they waited on all of those and just ignored my dad. His ice cream was sitting on the counter, melting. And after she had taken care of all of the other customers, that she came to him, and his ice cream had melted. So he just left it on the counter and went home.
What did that encounter mean to you then?
Well, it meant that we were thought of as being less than other people, the other race, and that no one really cared, and that if we had to make it, it would have to be on our own. That we would have to have our faith and our trust in God, and not. I guess that was the first experience that I had encountered, because I was there with him. And I thought, well, Lord, if this is going to be the way it is, I don't think I want to live. But my mom told me that the Lord will make a way somehow, and that's what we believed in. And I guess this is where the nonviolent and the not to retaliate registered in our mind, that a lot of things you just have to accept and not hate, but just do the best that you can and love everybody. So it left a mark in us, but it still gave us the courage not to hate, and to still treat everybody like we wanted to be treated.
Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Holmes. This actually, Ms. Trent, reminds me of something you shared, and I'm going off script a little bit. And it was, I think, the quote that you selected in your high school yearbook. Could you speak into the mic, but share what that quote was?
I will allow no man to diminish my soul by hating him.
I think that was Booker T. Washington, and others may have quoted it, but that always stood out to me. Yeah. You all are saying very similar things. All right. Thank you both. It's a hard transition, but I know we've got to be mindful of time. Y'all, we could sit in their stories for hours. This is just the tip. So come back, there will be more. Ms. Trent arrived to St. Philip's School of Nursing in Richmond, Virginia as a student in 1951. I love this because she was carrying 2 belongings, 1 suitcase and a brown paper bag. Differing from her peers, she spent a gap year in beauty school to become a beautician after graduating from Huntington High School in Newport News, Virginia. This expertise provided some financial independence while in nursing school, as she managed the expenses of her studies and daily living. Ms. Trent, can you tell us what it was like to be a student at St. Philip's School of Nursing and to provide care at St. Philip Hospital?
We were paying to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were paying to work because the ward, a lot of times it would just be the nurse and maybe an orderly or something. And the patients were sick because of financial reasons and because of they did not trust doctors, the fear. When they came to the hospital, they were at death's door, death pulling them one way and we're trying to get them back. And so it was hard work. And then you had the patient was the thing. If the patient was going to jump out the window, you jump first so he has something to land on. And really,
so what I'm hearing is putting the patient first.
Right. If you put the patient first. And I was thinking, yeah, one night I was working on the surgical unit and I heard the medicine room was in the hallway. I heard this loud bang and I went running and there's a patient who had just come from surgery having a craniotomy laying on the floor with his head caught in the bed rails. The bed rails used to, fit. I called the doctor and when he came up he said, "Who's up here besides you?" I said, "No one." He said, "No one's been here besides you?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, will you tell me how this patient in bed rail got back in the bed?" I had picked the patient up and scared to death. Picked him up and the rail and put him in the bed.
By yourself.
Yeah, so, we had to take care of our patients and I didn't have, any other choice because I didn't have money to go anywhere else. So I had to stay here.
Yes, that was hard work.
I didn't realize it at that time. No. But we worked, a lot of times we were the ones the students staffed the wards, yeah.
Yeah, you said the students staffed the wards. And you also mentioned can you mention some about the professors and teachers who taught you? And how that also led to graduates having a sense of, I know what I'm doing and I'm prepared.
Well, I did, and I think most of them felt that they were equipped and prepared to work most any place. And a lot of them, went into the service and became colonels and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Thank you. Ms. Holmes' academic pathway differed from Ms. Trent, and it was not linear. She departed Gladys, Virginia, and attended 2 programs in her personal pursuit to gain the credential registered nurse. In 1955, she entered Piedmont Sanatorium's School of Nursing in Burkeville, Virginia, where she studied and worked caring for Black patients receiving treatment for tuberculosis. Ms. Holmes graduated from Piedmont Sanatorium in 1957 with a specialization that she referred to as CTN, Certified Tuberculosis Nursing. At this point in the presentation, you may be wondering why this history is relevant to St. Philip's School of Nursing. Well, Piedmont Sanatorium, as mentioned earlier, had a joint affiliation and permitted qualified students to enter St. Philip's School of Nursing to complete their requirements to become a registered nurse. Enters Ms. Holmes, who departed Burkeville, Virginia, with her father at her side and arrived in Richmond, Virginia to St. Philip's School of Nursing dormitory. Ms. Holmes, can you tell us what it was like to be a student here at St. Philip's School of Nursing? And later, could you mention to us why you were so focused on becoming a registered nurse? And I'm gonna have you make sure the mic's right there.
Well, in order to answer that, let me go back a little and explain that during that junction in my life, there were only 3 schools of nursing that were available for Black students. That was Piedmont Sanatorium School of Nursing, Hampton University, and of course, St. Philip. And I chose Piedmont because of my financial situation. I knew that my dad couldn't afford to send me to Hampton University or to St. Philip, so I chose Piedmont because after that first 6 weeks of preclinicals, we were paid a small stipend, and that allowed me to have monies for my personal items and so forth. Those of us who completed the 2 years disqualified us to be certified tuberculosis nursing. And of course, that title no longer exists now, but we had to affiliate with St. Philip to finish the other courses like pediatrics and gynecology and operating room experience and orthopedics in order to sit for the
board.
state board. So and I was very interested in going all the way because this was the chance that I had. So when I entered, of course, it was segregated. St. Philip was for the Black students and MCV was for the white students. And we were allowed to affiliate there for 16 months, which gave us the experience that we needed to sit for the state board exam. So I graduated at the head of my class at Piedmont, and I took the state board and passed it the first time. And I was just, my dream had come true. You know, I never thought it would be possible for this little farm girl from this little town that nobody knew about in Gladys, Virginia, could be a registered nurse. And of course, everybody at home treated me like I was a doctor. And my parents were very proud of me and they supported me all the way.
I always, when we spoke of your journey before, I picture you on the train leaving Richmond and going back home to Gladys, Virginia. And I picture your time with your dad a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he would always be there. If I told him that the train would be there at 10, he'd be there at 9, just in case it came earlier, because he didn't want me standing up there by myself.
Yeah.
And I might add that Mother made all of our clothes. And when I packed my homemade clothes in that suitcase to go to Piedmont, it encompassed all of that she had. She even made my slips.
Yeah.
So I had, as I said before, I had very little money, but I was determined to succeed. And I did. And I thank God for that. And I thank God for my parents who was supporting me all the way.
Yeah.
And the only scholarship that I received was a $50 scholarship from the American Red Cross.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And also the emphasis on it took a village. A lot of times supporting students in this journey meant that there was a whole family or community. People were putting farms up for collateral. They were making things. They were sending you with what they had, championing you to make it possible. So thank you for that. Ms. Trent,
Yes.
I'm gonna, my mic or Ms. Trent's mic? Oh, Mike, let's see. I may have to connect you. I might have to put this here, Ms. Trent. There we go. Can you all hear her? Are we okay in the back? Okay. So Ms. Trent graduated from St. Philip's School of Nursing in 1954. Differing from her arrival in 1951, Ms. Trent, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna talk about New York. Differing from her arrival in 1951, Ms. Trent did not possess her single luggage or brown paper bag. Instead, her luggage remained delayed in transport in New York because St. Philip's School of Nursing students were required to complete a 3-month rotation at Brooklyn Hospital for their psychiatric nursing clinical experience. Well, MCV, the Medical College of Virginia Hospital and School of Nursing, were within walking distance to St. Philip, but students again could not attend there. So they traveled outside of Virginia across multiple state lines to go to New York because the program remained segregated. Black students paid the additional cost in their time and resources simply to obtain their nursing credential. But returning to 1954, Ms. Trent, can you tell us about graduation day, where your luggage was, and how in the world you still ended up present with a robe, even though you had no clothes?
Well,
and I'm gonna have you put the mic close.
I don't know where my luggage was. I had a cousin who lived in Richmond whose foot was the same size as mine, so I had to borrow some shoes from her, and also a skirt from one of my neighbors because we wore gowns. So then all I needed was the black skirt and the shoes, and that was it.
So I think your cousin Candace is who?
Yeah, Candace. Her foot was the same, so I borrowed shoes from her, and from one of her neighbors, I got a black skirt. And so that was it.
And who was present at your graduation?
Who was present?
If I'm remembering correctly, Miss Elsie Jackson.
My grandmother, and yes, my grandmother.
What did graduating mean to you, but also to your grandmother?
Well, well, I was just elated, but I think for my grandmother, my graduating was an achievement for her. She was just so proud, just so proud because she had gotten someone to drive her up, Yeah.
She said, "We made it."
Yeah, we made it.
We made it.
Yeah, because she even sold her sewing machine so that I could get clothes to graduate in, so.
Wow.
And that kind of thing.
She sold her sewing machine.
Yeah.
Yes. The investment.
Mm-hmm.
But she made it.
Yeah.
Yes. And pictured in the top corner, I have a graduation picture from the 1954 The Light yearbook, which was the St. Philip yearbook. And that is Miss Burlette Trent at the top. I can't read the quote attached to it, but it's very much on par with her personality. I can stand up and read it. So we have Miss Burlette Cook, nicknamed Cookie. The world is a tragedy to those who think and a comedy to those who feel. I want you all to know when I go to Miss Burlette's home, I'm usually in stitches laughing. Her stories and honesty alone. So that is a very fitting quote. And that came from the yearbook of Miss Virginia Roan from her personal collection. I also have Miss Mary Gilbert Holmes, who, yes, graduated from Piedmont Sanatorium in 1957. but finished her affiliation with St. Philip in 1959. And if anyone questioned if these two schools were ever affiliated, I have a primary source record where we see it says Piedmont Sanatorium and St. Philip School of Nursing. This is where she graduated from. It also shows her passing the nursing boards with flying colors. These ladies were prepared. Actually, both of them were top of their class. So yeah, can we just clap for making it through graduation? Right. I'm gonna go forward and I want to talk about Ms. Trent. After you graduated from St. Philip's School of Nursing in 1954, you worked at Dooley Hospital.
Yes, yes.
At Dooley Hospital, taking care of Black pediatric patients.
Pediatric patients.
And you stayed there for a little bit, but
Yes,
there's
I
a reason
did.
you left to go to the Veteran Affairs Medical Center here
Yes, it was.
in Richmond. Can you tell us that story?
I worked days at Dooley. And it was during the time that they had the polio outbreak now. Well, anyway, I was doing all of the work that the head nurse should have been doing, but she was working evenings, and you work evenings, you also get an evening differential. So I went to the office and I said that I didn't think it was fair that I was doing her work and she was getting the head nurse pay plus the evening differential. So they told me their budget wouldn't allow it. So I said, mine won't allow me to stay.
Okay.
So,
Oh, okay.
so I left and went over to the VA and got a job.
Yes, went over to the VA and got a
Got a
job
job.
and increased pay.
Didn't make an appointment or anything, just went. You know,
Yeah,
so that's how I left MCD.
yes. That story always stands out for me as we even think about equitable pay and wages and fair wages, but also the work that nurses do.
Mhm.
So even today. All right. Ms. Holmes completed her program at St. Philip Nursing in 1959 amidst the backdrop of massive resistance. She briefly worked at Central State Hospital and later accepted a position in Charlottesville at the University of Virginia Hospital, where she was among some of the first registered nurses to work on their desegregated wards. She leaves Charlottesville, however, in 1963 after she marries the late Reverend Dr. Arthur A. Holmes and relocates to Lynchburg, Virginia. As you go to Lynchburg, you're looking for a new job, Ms. Holmes. Can
Yes.
you tell us about your decision to apply at Virginia Baptist Hospital and what happened when you arrived?
Well, when I arrived at the hospital, I was frankly told that that even though when I worked in Charlottesville, they had integrated. So I was offered head nurse position at UVA, and where I had both white and Black patients. As I said before, I left there. I spent almost 2 years at UVA, and I came to Lynchburg after I was married, and I applied at Virginia Baptist Hospital. The hospitals in Lynchburg had not integrated, which I didn't know that because I had just left UVA that was integrated, and then I was promptly told that they did not hire Black nurses there. So I applied to Lynchburg General. And I was hired in Lynchburg General, but only on one ward, 3A, which was targeted as the colored floor. So that's where I worked for almost a year, and which I thought was not fair, but I applied to public health. and I stayed in public health for 25 years. I was one of the first Black nurses to be hired at the Lynchburg Health Department. I was treated fairly well there. My health director, I almost want to cry when I say this, but he referred to me as his Negro nurse. This is Mary Holmes, my Negro nurse. And so I took that as long as I could. So I finally told him, my license says registered professional nurse like everybody else's.
Yes.
And I was surprised at his response. I thought he would fire me for what I said, but he told me that he really didn't mean anything because that's the way he was brought up too. So I think we forget that, the way we were brought up and the way that our white counterparts were brought up, they weren't responsible for that. So that's what he knew as a child, and that's what I knew. I knew that we were ignored and thought maybe less than anyone else, but he understood that, and he never called me that again. He called me Mrs. Holmes like he called the rest of the nurses.
I'm glad that you were not fired,
Right.
because during that time you also needed your job. You've become a mother. You're
Right.
raising children.
Right.
There was a risk in speaking up and saying something,
Right.
and you did, and there was a change. And sometimes you speak up and there is no change.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy that in this instance, there was a change.
But the cafeteria was closed to preventing us from eating together. So you went on one side part and the other part comes later.
Yes. Yes. Well, speaking of that, and mindful of time, because we want to do a question and answer, I did want to recognize, especially since we're in the Living Legacy series, an opportunity first. Both of them combined have over, I would say, 60 plus years of distinguished service. Ms. Trent retired from the Veteran Affairs Hospital after serving for 30 years there, went on to work at Richmond Community Hospital and volunteer and do work. Once a nurse, always a nurse. And Ms. Holmes worked at the health department in Lynchburg, but then she also goes back to Virginia Baptist, the same hospital that said, we will not hire you. And later, after they desegregated, she said, what you will do is hire me because I am also qualified. And she did work there temporarily.
Yes.
And has continued to volunteer and serve. Once a nurse, always a nurse. So again, activism looks different in different ways. It can be speaking up for equal pay, or it could be speaking up and saying, put some respect on my name. This is what my credential says. It can be both.
After I retired from public health, I went back to, I was hired at Virginia Baptist, and I worked there for 7 years. So I retired from a hospital that refused to employ me in the beginning, which was a blessing.
Yes. Is there any advice that you all would like to give to the healthcare professionals who are on Zoom or who are here today in person? What advice would you want nurses, doctors, physical therapists, chaplains, social workers? What would you like us to remember as we are caring for patients? And either of you can answer. Do you want to start, Ms. Trent?
That, that people are individuals and you cannot treat them all the same. And that there will be a lot of things that will come out of the patient's mouth and their families too, that you just have to ignore and go on.
To treat them, you said.
And treat them right. And some of it will be ignorant, some of it other, they're people and you just have to,
It's reminding me of an encounter you had, but I know that maybe we can bring it up during question and answer, but how you responded when you weren't seen as the nurse, when patients and families were like send in the nurse, but they
Mhm.
didn't see you. But yes. Ms. Holmes, any advice?
To be true to your calling and to do your job, not for the pay, but because you love people and that you want them to treat them as you would want to be treated if you were a patient. I think that's very important. The pay is pretty good, but you don't work for any job for the money. If you go in that, then that's the wrong reason. I think it's important that you keep that in mind, that we were put on this earth to help one another, and nursing is a helping occupation. So just do your job, be true to your calling, and everything will work out fine.
Well, thank you. And then Miss Trent, I know that you have been involved and active with the St. Philip Alumni Association. Is there anything that you would like us to remember about St. Philip's School of Nursing?
That St. Philip's School of Nursing.
Ms. Holmes, there you go. Okay. Okay.
The nurses that were taught and came out were prepared to work in most any situation. In fact, when we went to Brooklyn State, they would say, "Here come those St. Philip nurses. They think they know everything," you know. And of course, I had to.
What would you say?
I said no, because we would go to the dining hall, and here come those St. Philip nurses. They think they know everything. And no, we don't know it all, but what we don't know, we leave it for you to learn.
I told Ms. Burlette has used humor. She has used humor her whole life. But she said honesty, yes. On that, there are a few things I want to call us to remember. As we commemorate the graduates of St. Philip's School of Nursing, what should we be challenged to remember? Specifically, who and what do we lose if we forget about St. Philip and St. Philip Hospital and School of Nursing? I have been wrestling with how memories sustain us in the absence of physical buildings, landmarks, daily awareness, or in the setting of institutional or collective amnesia. Memories alone are limited if they are not ascribed to meaning and action. This Living Legacy series provides us with an opportunity to remember, and as a community member and friend, Dr. Carmen Foster previously reminded me to respond. We started this segment of the program with our eyes closed. This is an invitation for us now to collectively keep our eyes open. What do we need to remember about St. Philip's School of Nursing and Hospital? We need to remember that transcending societal expectations, Black nurses during this era duly challenged exclusionary practices in school systems, in education, and healthcare. We need to remember that Black nurses were at the center of health and community activism. Nursing was more than a vocational calling. It was also a form of self-actualization, agency, and resistance. We need to remember that for nearly 40 years, almost 800 graduates attended St. Philip's School of Nursing, as the school served as a premier training program for Black women across the United States until it closed in 1962. We need to remember that the story of these alumni transcends local and state history. It is a part of American history. We need to remember that St. Philip Hospital was only accessible for Black patients and nurses. Black physicians remained excluded from practicing or training in that facility. This is as much a nursing history as it is a medical history. We need to remember that Black physicians, health professionals, and investors in the Commonwealth saw a need and acted to improve the Black community's healthcare access prior to MCV's establishment of St. Philip in 1920. In 1902, Richmond Community Hospital was created by Black physicians, including the visionary Dr. Sarah Garland Jones, to provide Black patients, nurses, and physicians access to care, employment, and practicing privileges. Dr. Forrester had practicing privileges at Richmond Community Hospital. We need to remember that patients, families, and community members remain impacted by this history. It is our responsibility as health professionals and as an institution to learn our local and institutional history. We need to remember to sit in the awareness that this is recent history. And lastly, we need to remember that there is still work to do. And on that note, and then there may be time just briefly to take one or two questions from the Zoom room and in person.
So if there are questions here, I'll walk the microphone to you. I'll start with Dr. Harris.
Not quite a question. You all have been generous enough with your time and asking questions. I just wanted to share. I've been around some so-called famous folk, and I pride myself on not being starstruck. But I have to be honest. I have not been able to take my eyes off the two of you when you first stood up. My heart started racing.
He's talking about you, Ms. Trent and Ms. Holmes.
Ms. Trent and Ms. Holmes. I realize I'm in the presence of real royalty here.
Mhm.
And I think about the things that we honor and the people that we give so much attention to that can't carry your water. They don't stack up to your contribution. So I am just grateful for you and who you are and what you shared with us today. But Ms. Trent, I welled up when I saw that you attended Huntington High School.
Sorry, she can't hear you.
I welled up when I saw that you attended Huntington High School.
He welled up when he welled up when he saw that you attended Huntington High School.
I worked security there. It's now a naval base, right, for the shipyard. I lived in Hampton for a bit. I worked at Newport News Huntington High School for 2 years while I was in college. So I welled up to think that I had walked the halls. I had to walk the halls every hour to check on the rooms and everything. And I likely have walked the halls that you walked. And again, it just struck me in such a way. God bless you all, and thank you so much for who you are and who you are to us. Thank you.
My name's Bob Petrus, retired obstetrician. I was struck by one of the first photographs you showed of Virginia Roan, who graduated in '61. And I can't help but wonder if she wasn't the supervising nurse in labor and delivery on the third floor of St. Philip's Labor and Delivery in 1968.
Someone behind you is saying,
Well, she saved my bacon
did she?
more times than I can mention. And if
Your
you're
name?
my Bob Petrus,
Yes. Yes.
one night in the middle of the night, there was nobody else around, and I just delivered a patient, and she's trying to bleed to death right there. And I did what I thought I needed to do, and I couldn't figure it out. And my eyes started to roll toward the divinity, and Miss Roan leaned over. Very gently, very professionally says, "Dr. Petrus, do you need the postpartum curette?"
Hmm.
And suddenly I thought, hell yeah. And I used the postpartum curette, got the rest of the placenta out, and life went on. And
Well, I
that
hope-
wasn't the only time, but that was the most dramatic time.
Yeah. Dr. Petrus, thank you for sharing that. And I hope to connect you and Miss Virginia in the future. She could not be here today, but yeah, an extraordinary nurse.
Her nurses towed the line.
Good afternoon. My name is Alvina Smith Thornton. I was one of those nurses, nursing students that worked the units with Miss Trent at St. Philip's. I entered VCU, or then MCV School of Nursing, in 1968.
Wow.
And so I didn't really understand, why am I coming, until I got here. And I realized that I came to say thank you. I'm trying not to cry, but to say thank you to the trailblazers who forged the way for people like me to be able not only to get into a nursing school, a nursing program that only 11 years before had been integrated, but to be able to do the things that God allowed me to do through them as a nurse, a registered nurse, for 50 some years. And I just want to say thank you with all my heart. I understand now, my Aunt Hilda, who is 90, turned 90 last month, was in St. Philip's with Miss Trent at the time. And so I didn't understand. So I'm here to say thank you from my heart, but also to say thank you for all you've done and continue to do to inspire nurses who care.
Yes. And thank you for your years of service. You also are a trailblazer in many ways too. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm similar to Dr. Harris. I would like to add a slightly different perspective here. So I had the opportunity of having an office in the old St. Philip's Hospital after it was decommissioned as a hospital. The university never has enough space. And so my department, I was with the Virginia Center on Aging. But what I want to say is this. I would walk into that building, and when I came to Richmond, I learned the history of St. Philip's, but I would walk into that building, and for some reason, every time I walked to my office, I had this feeling. The hair would stand up on my head, and I was trying to just imagine the experiences that happened there. And so what I want to say to Ms. Holmes and Ms. Trent today, thank you for giving some reality to the spirit in that building. Your spirit was in the building. Every time I walked in there, I thought about who was there. I thought about the people you served. I thought about the experiences they had. And so today, I am thrilled to see that these are the people that made the hair stand up on my head. I didn't know who they were,
Wow.
but I am delighted today to meet some of the people that were in that building that served as an office later on. Thank you all so much.
Woo.
I can just imagine what you all did. And I did get to meet some other St. Philip's graduates since I've been in Virginia, in Richmond, Virginia. I don't know if you all knew Rebecca Hinton and Mabel Mason, but they were nurses at St. Philip's as well. But thank you all. Now I know why my hair stood up when I walked in that building.
Yes.
Thank you, Trailblazers. Thank you so much.
I'm trying not to cry, but Mrs. Holmes is my mother. And I'm a nurse because of her. I was inspired, oh God, I was inspired by my mother just because she was my mother and I got to see her be a nurse in my home. She was my mom. It wasn't until things like this that I realized how much of a force my mother was and how much that it was she went through to get to where she was. And she's an outstanding nurse for over 50 years. It's because of her that I became a nurse. I have 5 to 6 cousins that are nurses. She has a sister who raised almost all of her 9 children before she was inspired to go back to school to be a nurse. And I'm standing to say that it came completely full circle. When she went to Virginia Baptist, I worked with her at Virginia Baptist. We had to work different shifts, but I worked there. I'm working here at VCU, a place where she got her education. And I am just, Mama, I want to say in the presence of these people that I thought you were amazing just being my mama. But I found out you were so much more amazing than I ever thought. And I appreciate you so much for breaking down doors and kicking down barriers for nurses like me.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Jackie. Woo. Now, Jackie? Ooh. Ooh, we're gonna have to do a collection plate. Feels like get the offering plate going. And then we'll see if there are any questions in the Zoom room after Dina.
Okay. Yeah, I have this great article coming out, VCU News later about Charlotte Ann Wynn Pollard, who was the first Black nursing student. And based on a Q&A that the faculty organized 5 years after she graduated, so they would be more sensitive, less racist to the new Black students coming in. And one thing she spoke about was like, of course, her experience, but that the degrees were different at St. Philip. And I just wanted to understand that better. What was a degree offered through MCV?
So I think
different?
she may be referring to, and I'd have to look at the transcript.
Okay.
So I know for St. Philip, you had the option to get a degree, but that's bachelor's, or you had the option to get a diploma. You could do a 3-year program.
Mhm.
Nursing, there are many credentials, many routes. And so this is why I was even asking Ms. Holmes, like, what made you specifically pursue becoming an RN? Because she could have stopped and been a tuberculosis nurse, but she went for additional credentialing. But the credential plus the degree usually meant more time and additional coursework. And at one point, RPI provided that. Then it was MCV, School of Nursing, then VCU, School of Nursing. And so I imagine that she received a degree and the credential, so both, since she was at MCV. But I would love to look at the transcript so we could see that. It's interesting because I think I get degrees in credentialing. When I think of it in terms of my research and work, I try to demystify it and say a nurse is a nurse is a nurse, whether you're a licensed practical nurse, whether you're a registered nurse, whether you're DNP, PhD, MSN, like a nurse is a nurse. However, when we also look at the context of this social political landscape, it did matter who had the degree because that meant who could be the head nurse, who could be promoted. And particularly if you were a Black woman, you already had the strike of race and gender against you. And so you will start to see many nurses during that time pushing themselves and putting themselves in spaces where they are one of few or the only so that they could obtain further education and access so that there is equitable pay and hopefully employment. But we don't really start to see that until, I would say, the late 70s, 80s. Excited for your article. And then not sure if there are any questions on the Zoom room. There are, well, maybe we'll take 2 and then be mindful that these folks have taken an extended lunch break and we don't want to get anyone fired. Oh, none in the Zoom room? No, okay, awesome.
I'm kind of shy, but I love what your Berlin Trent is my mother.
Come on, Kenneth.
And she didn't say when she left that job and went to McGuire Hospital that she, we know what I'm going to say, she broke the barrier. She was the first Black head nurse at McGuire Hospital.
Yes.
And she was over a war. So she integrated that. So I thought I would just say that. And it's blessed to know, because she don't talk, she's not one to brag and talk about a lot of things. Like she went to school when she went to New York. She went to school with Betty Shabazz, you know, Malcolm X's wife. And it's a whole lot of other history she didn't talk about, but I just thought I would say that.
Yes.
That's
yes.
my mom right there.
Kenneth, come on, Mom. Yeah. We are gonna get ready. Oh, yes. There's one question in the chat. Yes, Logan.
Did either of you know nursing instructor Helen Bowles, wife of pharmacist Alan Bowles?
Did you know a Helen Bowles? Helen Bowles? Helen?
Goals.
Mm-mm. No, no. But we'll make note to learn more about Helen Bowles.
Yes,
Yeah.
her husband was a pharmacist, Alan Bowles at St. Philip's.
Okay, Helen Bowles and Al Bowles. Okay, we'll make note of that. Well, this work continues. This Living Legacy series is this is part one, but there's part two that will be taking place soon. We have some flyers outside because we've partnered also with the School of Medicine, and they are going to be doing a similar lecture coming up. And so Ashley, I will invite you to say a few words on that, and then I'm going to close with a final thank you. Did you want to say something, Miss Mary? Yep. Sorry, okay.
Thank you. Could we get another round of applause for our panel? So I would like to invite you all to join us as we continue the conversation next Tuesday. That's the 27th from noon to 1 at the School of Medicine. That's 1201 East Marshall Street, as we will be inviting 1969 School of Medicine alumnus, Dr. Philip Bird Jr., as he's going to talk about his journey to medicine. So we just want to invite you all to join us via Zoom or in person. And the link to register is in the chat for the Zoom folks. And then flyers are also outside for those who are here. Thank y'all.
Great. And so again, this is a call and response. Let's go above remembering. I want to thank all of you for being present today, as was said so beautifully by members of our audience. I mean, really, I am because you are. And so sitting at their stories, I've known Ms. Holmes since 2017, and I just met Ms. Burlett this year, but there is something really powerful when you are in the presence of women who have pressed forward despite all odds and still have the ability to hold space for you. And so I have been moved and just so grateful for the gifts that you all have given me and poured into me, because I take it with me. I want to thank my colleagues in the HRC, my fellowship cohort, because a lot of this work gets filtered through them and they provide feedback. So thank you all for being present today. Again, the palliative care unit, shout out to my team who does amazing work. The families that travel to support our panelists, thank you all for being here. And then similar to them, I couldn't do this without my mama and my daddy. And can my mom and dad, and I think my brother's here too, but he might be in the back, but can my mom and dad stand up? Because I have only made it this far because of them, and I'm grateful. So on that note, we're going to close. There's an optional reception, so please grab food if you have to go. I have members from my church family that also came, so thank you all for being here. We're going to continue this work. Let's get our hands dirty.